If you're like me, a year or two ago, you're told by friends or family, people around you, that you need to be more realistic. And this idea of being realistic, when it sank in, made you realize that it's keeping you in a box. And I've certainly felt that way, a sense of sadness, a sense of despair that I wasn't living up to my life's tasks. And you see, to be realistic is to live within the bounds of what other people have even deemed is possible for you. And in this video, in 3 steps, I'm going to explain why you should be more delusional. Why being delusional is not only the key to your purpose and your path, but ultimately the key to freedom. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. The first point here actually comes from a book that I recently read called The Courage to be Disliked. It's a really good book. It has this dialogue between this philosopher and a student who becomes a friend, and they go back and forth on this idea around Adlerian psychology. So the first point here is Adlerian psychology. And you might be wondering what this even is. If you've never read the book before, I highly recommend you get the audiobook, or I personally like reading just the book. But the idea of Adlerian psychology is we have certain beliefs and ideas, things we think about the world, and we look for evidence to reinforce those beliefs. And oftentimes, those beliefs we hold are keeping us away from a deeper sense of truth, a deeper sense of what is already within us. Things that we know we want to do, but perhaps don't have the courage to face, or there's pain or blocks in the way that are not getting us there. And so we change ourselves to believe new beliefs that conform to a reality where we don't have to cross that line or go over that fence. And you see, this idea of being realistic it works in with this Adlerian psychology in a way that oftentimes our people around us, this control system, whatever you want to call it, this construct, it gets us to think that we have to live within certain bounds. And so what happens over time, say you've been working a corporate job for a long time, or that's a great example actually, a corporate job you've been going to for a long time, and you hate the job, you've hated the job for years maybe even, but you look for evidence of why you should stay. Because to not stay, let's be honest, there's probably some hard decisions that you have to make. And I certainly was in this group for a long time when I was a paramedic, and I was starting to feel burnt out from the job that I was doing. And I knew the night shifts, the burnout, the general lifestyle around that kind of work was not healthy for me. It was, I knew mentally and physically I was starting to degrade. But relating back to this Adlerian psychology, I would look for evidence of why I should stay. I would convince myself the pay was really good. I would convince myself I was there to help others, that was really my life's purpose. Which later on you'll find that there's deeper meanings to your life purpose. But at the time, that's what I held on to. I held on to the idea that my coworkers needed me, that I was so needed in the workplace that if I was to leave, something catastrophic would happen, in my local station or unit, right? Or my partner, paramedics work in pairs, my partner, something would happen to them. And so this idea of Adlerian psychology is something we can just become aware of, how there's deeper meanings to our purpose. And when we sit at the surface level, if there's certain things we don't want to face because it'll make us uncomfortable, or it'll disturb the fabric of reality around us, what people will think, right? Then we will oftentimes look for evidence in our current reality to reinforce exactly where we are. And this is sort of the trap of being realistic. Number 2 is that we live in a left brain society. We live in a society that's dominated by logic, right? This is not something I think I have to explain very deeply, but think about your whole schooling, the whole entirety of schooling that you went through, the scientists, the data-driven insights, and the data-driven society that we live in. Delusion can be measured because delusion operates on a frequency. Delusion operates off of a feeling, which it's much more abstract. It's very hard to measure. David Hawkins has actually done some work on this with his map of consciousness. And what he basically says there is the level of consciousness can be measured across many different aspects, like your God view, your emotional perception, your view of yourself. These things are sort of metrics that you can use, and he created a system to actually measure the level of vibration that you're at. Now, the level of vibration that you're at will dictate kind of what you're able to see beyond your current reality. And so delusion, unfortunately, can't be measured. And so what's happened is we live in this left brain society that almost gatekeeps us from being more delusional. But think about it. Some of the best business ideas, some of the most game-changing ideas, think about the iPhone, right? Steve Jobs came from this idea of being delusional and thinking outside the box. What made the iPhone successful, for example, what made Apple successful as a company under the leadership of Steve Jobs was actually a calligraphy class that he did that made him realize a certain type of typography and aesthetic that then got integrated with the Apple products, and it made it super unique and it stood out from the rest of the non-artistic computer software and computer products that are available at the time. So it's this sort of delusional, abstract thinking. When people call you crazy, realize it's a good thing. You know, when I left my job as a paramedic, many people questioned, and maybe not to my face, but you could feel it, questioned my life decision, right? And ultimately it was my decision, but I knew there was something better for me. I knew I had a deeper level of purpose that I could fulfill. And finally, sort of after trial and error, starting to figure out what my life's tasks even are, and starting to lean into that a little bit more. And yes, I had to break down my own barriers. I had to break down my own walls. But on the other side of that was a sense of freedom, was a sense of true expression, and to be able to express myself more creatively. And I don't know, you might be feeling the same way. Let me know in the comments down below if you're feeling like you live in this like hyper logic society where it's trying to really govern the things that you want to do and the decisions you want to make based on data that you have. Some of the best decisions we make in life are not backed by any sort of data or statistics, right? And then the third point here comes from Hermetic philosophy. All is mind. What do I mean by all is mind? The Hermetic principles are a set of, I believe, 12 principles that were written thousands of years ago by a man named Hermes Trismegistus. Actually, some people don't know if it was one man or three men. He's a very mysterious figure. But this idea that all is mind, that our physical reality is actually what you see, is actually a narrow spectrum of light that's getting absorbed through your eyeballs, right? That then gets processed by the central nervous system, which will take this light and turn it into thoughts and emotions and beliefs and visuals and create that in your mind. So all is mind. Literally your body is a manifestation of your mind. And this is a little trippy to think about, right? I mean, there was a story I shared on my channel not long ago where a man had a sort of brain-eating disease that he was not aware of. And the brain-eating disease had atrophied and eaten up over like a vast majority of his brain tissue. And what happened is he was still fully conscious. He was fully aware. He had all his thoughts, emotions, which then brought up this idea, which then brought up this concept of where does consciousness actually come from? And consciousness itself does not even come from our physical body. You're just a radio receiver, able to receive this signal, a frequency, which you then process, and based on your level of vibration, are able to see things in your reality. Now, something incredible will happen, and you probably have experienced this, is once you start taking these delusional steps, following your intuition, things may begin falling into place for you, especially if you're following your purpose, things that you've always felt called to. And then in hindsight, doesn't it seem so obvious when you look back at your life, all the little breadcrumbs, all the little steps that led you to where you are now? This is the magic of being delusional. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Until next time, peace.